Such sweet sounds. They hearken back to a time long, long ago. The Middle Ages, specifically. You're listening to Music Student 101. Here are your hosts, Jeremy Burns and Matthew Scott Phillips.
All right, what a great way to come into the episode.
So very relaxing, isn't it?
So glorious. What you just heard were the vocal talents of our good friend, Sarah James.
Very nice.
She was singing Columba Aspezit by Hildegard of Bingen, which we will talk about in this episode.
Indeed.
She is the wife of our announcer, Mike Cunliffe.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so a very talented pair, the two of those.
Yeah.
You know, I mentioned a while back they both do theater.
Right.
And Mike does improv comedy. And Sarah has a great voice, as you hear. And she sings at the church every Sunday as a gig. And
very good.
Keeping those pipes going. And
yeah,
you can really tell. And it's also kind of cool to have a married couple both occupying our intro.
Yeah.
You know, we got the wife singing and the husband talking.
Did you get to record them together, or do they need to be like, you know?
They were on the same session, but we didn't do it at the same time. That would have been fun.
That would have been fun.
Yeah. But anyway, we want to thank her and congratulate her on a job well done. I'm sure we will hear more from Sarah James.
Yeah, Columbia Exposit, not kid stuff.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
She was asking if I have notation for that. I was like, I might have nooms. Let me go see if I can find them. But we pulled it off. We made it happen.
Nooms.
Which we'll talk about too.
Which we'll talk about. So
if you guys didn't figure it out, we have another fine episode for you guys.
We do.
Something we talked about a long time ago on the very first episode.
One of the very first.
Yes, we said that we would be doing some music history.
And we have not done it.
Well, no, we did ancient music, and that was kind of
music history. Yeah.
Episode on music history. We jumped way ahead and did the blues.
Yeah.
So my sense of sequence is already screwed up.
No sense of timing whatsoever.
So that OCD has been broken, and we're going to go with it. But if we were to do an episode after ancient music, this would be the episode.
Well, you know, we'd have to do the music of the Greek and Roman times, I suppose.
Oh my God! Then we have to come back and do that after this. That's gonna really screw with me, but that's okay because today I'm prepared.
Well, but this particular era is different from those eras because this era we actually know, and by we I mean the music academic community actually knows enough about this era to talk about it to some degree of certitude as to what exactly happened.
Well, compared to ancient music, which is
speculation,
and
a lot
before
of it.
It's pre-civilization.
Yeah, pre-civilization, a lot speculation, a lot of it.
Where at this point, written history has become a thing.
Right. Yeah, and in the classical civilizations, ancient Greece and ancient Rome and stuff, also a lot of speculation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, we have writings of Pythagoras and Plato and people like that, and you know we can sort of draw conclusions about what they wrote about music.
Mm-hmm.
But starting with this era, not to bury the lead any more than I already have, we actually have a sense of at least some of the stuff that went on, and we can talk with a certain amount of certitude, with a certain amount of confidence, that this is not our speculation about what might have happened or probably happened, but we have confidence. I know this is more or less what happened. You know, minus one or few details that are up to speculation. Sure, but this is what happened, and this is the era of the Middle Ages.
You know, a little side BS. We talk about the music of ancient Greece and Rome.
Yeah,
aren't all the modes in Greek names Dorian, Lydian?
They are, yeah,
named after Greek islands or
yeah, there are places
cultures
in Greece and they're Greek in their origin. And the overtone series is supposed to date back to Pythagoras, who discovered the ratio by walking by a blacksmith shop and saying, "Oh, hey, an anvil half the size of this anvil will hit a note that's an octave higher when you strike it." And so that is supposed to go back to Greece, you know.
Pythagoras, math man extraordinaire.
Right, and the ancient modes definitely go back to Greece. We don't know exactly what they sounded like to the Greeks, but they do go back that far.
Very cool.
So, yeah.
Well, before we get any more into Middle Ages music, I think it's time we hear from a few of our listeners.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, let's start off. We have no new reviews to speak of so far at this point.
What?
Oh,
well.
But you know what to do about that.
Yeah, go leave us a review.
Some people give us donations, and some people feel they can't really, if they can't financially, if that doesn't really work for them,
right,
they can help us out by posting a review on whatever podcasting service or output.
Yep, and that is very helpful.
It
helps us get noticed.
Share and like and share alike.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, moving on to our Patreon patron, we have our friend Tyler Critchlow. He says his last name can be a doozy, so we're going to go with Critchlow and see how that works.
It's probably one of the variations he's heard, if not the correct one. So.
I know, so he's not stressing that. He is from Utah.
Yes, he is.
Hello to our friends in Utah.
Our listeners. Nice. Yeah, Utah the state, not Utah the place in Alabama.
Oh no, that's EUTA. Is it EUTAW?
Yeah,
Utah, Alabama.
Yeah, it probably ought to be pronounced Utah. But of course it's Utah.
So they spelled it like they heard it.
Yeah.
I only hope it's like some kind of an Indian tribe name.
Me
not
too.
us actually trying to misspell Utah. Okay, anyway.
But
Tyler has picked up the guitar back up after a few years.
All right, yeah, okay.
And he's been learning from the ground up.
Wow.
He started to branch out to find YouTube channels and podcasts, and that's how he found us.
That's great.
He feels that the best way to learn music is by transcribing. He feels this has also accelerated his own musical growth.
Right, and he goes on to say, usually I'll get an understanding of the rhythm first, then I'll listen for any repeat notes, and if the pitch is ascending or descending, then hopefully by the grace of the music gods above, my ear is feeling that it today, and I can get some work done.
The music gods are always listening.
Fickle gods, those.
Yes, they are. Sometimes cruel.
They're kind of like Greek gods, just depends on what day,
Today you'll sing like an angel. Today you'll hear like a rock.
Yeah. Anyway, he continues, so if you guys could do a digression, it would be what your ways to transcribe are. Really, if you have a certain strategy or a way to approach learning a song that could help with the process. My struggle lately has been hearing chord qualities. No kidding. More acoustic songs lately, especially the middle notes if it's a larger chord.
Yes, the struggle is real.
That's a problem. Or if it's a piano song I'm trying to learn, it's harder for me to decipher what the left hand is doing if there is a lot going on there in the song. So if you guys could share any strategies you think will generally help that are standing out to you, that would be greatly appreciated.
Transcribing?
Well, first of all, this is a very useful skill.
This warrants an episode.
Yeah, it probably does.
Not a Patreon episode, like a real
yeah, we could probably. It is a skill I've made actual money on in the past. Actual greenbacks. Yeah, so definitely something that you, if you're good at it, you want to be good at, and it also, of course, helps your ear training. He's very much right in that. That the mental process that you are applying when you sit down and try to figure out, well, what song is that, and try to write it correctly. That's you learning to speak the language of music, and it's an invaluable resource.
And really stripping it down, almost like when we used to, what do we do with sentences? We would
diagram the sentences, yeah. Almost kind of stripping it down to its base components like that. Let's see, I guess I can talk about when I'm transcribing something.
Yeah, sure. This will help a lot of people.
Yeah. The first thing I feel like I need is probably the chord progression.
Okay.
Or since the chord progression, I will often start with the bass line first.
Uh-huh.
And, if I need to, and I usually do, I'll drag out my bass and think, okay, just sort of pick out what I'm hearing in the bass line. And then I think, well, okay, the chords that are going over that feel less daunting now, because I know the bass line. So, I have a sense of where the roots are. And then I'll go in and I guess pick out the melody next. And I'm realizing as I say this is the strategy I promote for ear training.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of our harmonic progressions episodes, this has been the actual
same skill, right? We're just at a level now where we're doing it for real.
Yeah.
So I'll pick out the melody first, and then the chords feel fairly obvious then. And whether they're major chords or minor chords, that does take a little bit more work. I might try to pick it out on the piano if I'm not certain. I may try to pick it out on the guitar if I'm not certain. Don't be ashamed to refer back to your instrument if you have to.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if, like in my case, I was getting paid. It needed to be right. So,
well, in our harmonic progression episodes, we kind of focus on the bass first and then the melody.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time we get those two down, we're really listening for more chord qualities.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we kind of neglect the middle voices a little bit in terms of actually notating them and identifying them.
Yeah.
And maybe that was by design on my end subconsciously, because those are the more difficult. I mean, that is no joke, man.
Yeah.
In those middle voices.
It's hard. And when we're talking about what Tyler is talking about, really sitting down with actual pieces of music and go, okay, what's going on here? Sometimes I find myself just listening and thinking, well, okay, this chord progression sounds diatonic. And if it sounds diatonic, then let's work on the assumption that it is diatonic, which means, I engage my theory brain. Okay, well, if this is a 2 chord, then it's going to be minor in a major key and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, be willing to abandon those assumptions if it doesn't sound right, if you don't sound like you got it. But start with those. If it sounds not diatonic, if it sounds like 7th chords and things, then I'm thinking, okay, well, what diatonic chord is it resolving to? And then think, okay, well, is that a 5 or was that a 7?
In fact, sometimes you can gather hints about the chord you're analyzing by observing the surrounding chords, the chord that comes before it or the chord that comes after it.
Yeah. I find it very difficult to go, okay, major chord, major chord, diminished chord, minor chord, just in succession like that. My brain doesn't perceive music that way.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to sort of, like I say, think, well, how dissonant is this chord? How much tug is this chord got? And then sort of reverse engineer. Well, if it's got a whole lot of tug and it sounds really dissonant, maybe it's a diminished chord, maybe it's a 7/off, or just a 7th chord.
Uh-huh.
Depending on the style, 7 chords are considered a consonants if you're talking about jazz or blues,
right?
But I'll do that, and I usually just pick around until I get it right. And the more picking around until you get it right you do, the faster you start to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lifelong process. You get to a point where you can hear things where you're without even really trying to sit down and apply that mental energy to it.
Yeah.
You'll find yourself hearing music on a TV show or something, and you'll think, oh yeah, that's a this, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and you'll feel something, and I could go play that if I really wanted to. I just feel, but you get to that point by constantly asking yourself these questions.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's that mental process of, well, is this or is it not this, or is it and yeah, like I said, don't be afraid to go to your guitar, your piano, pick it out till you get it right.
Yeah.
If you don't feel like you're getting it right, don't think, oh, I suck. I'm not getting this right. Think, well, what is the problem? What are we missing?
Well, I think it's actually cool that you bust out your bass to get the bass lines.
Yeah.
Now, Tyler
comfort zone. Right?
Well, see, now this comfort is a very good point, because Tyler was saying that he's having trouble with hearing what the left hand is doing.
Yeah.
So he might be where we're kind of geared towards bass.
Yeah.
He might be more geared towards the higher end.
Yeah, it might be easier for him to work with melody first.
Yeah.
And then sort of engage your theory brain and think, all right, well, what makes a good harmony with this melody that I figured out? You know, and that may be easier for him. Mm-hmm. You know, there's no one right way to do this.
Yeah, so hopefully that'll help out a little bit. Maybe we can expound on that process within our own podcast. Yeah. We're getting all these great new ideas for episodes from our listener mail. So
and we really appreciate it.
Keep them coming.
Yeah. Tyler does have a little bit more to say here.
Oh.
He says, I also love all the ear training podcasts you guys have done. I can't ever get enough of it. Now there is a guy after my own heart. Do
right?
You know how many music students hate ear training?
I know, but our listeners love it.
Our listeners really like it. That's because we have cool listeners.
I think they're just sadists and they like to hear Jeremy torture. That's what I'm going with.
But he says, one tip that helps me a ton that you may want to pass on to your followers. If I'm working or driving, I'll have an app on my phone, Pitchfork or Pitch Producer, any tuning app should do it. Drone out a middle C, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I'll find the note with my voice and start singing scale degrees, ascending and descending. I can feel the resonance in my voice. If I can hit a perfect fifth, for example, yeah, it sounds right to me, to my ear, and also feels right in my throat. And yes, that is a very that is a very important insight there.
We talked about that in the solfege episode, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a physical connection.
Yes.
Music is in the body, I think is what you said.
Music is in the body. It's not in the brain.
Yeah.
I mean, or at least it's not just in the brain.
It happens in the brain as a consequence of what's going on in the body. We're not scientists.
And we could get into metaphysics on this.
We're not metaphysicists
or scientists. But yeah, that's an important thing to note. He says, sing out the one chord and go to the four chord. Sky is the limit. Anyway, it's just a fun way to get some ear training in. And I figured you may want to pass that along if you so choose. And yes, I definitely do, because he's definitely right. Sing a note and then try to sing the fifth above that.
And that, yes, I mean, it sounds like he's applying some really good ear training techniques.
Yeah.
These days, when you used to have to spend $40 on a tuner, these days your phone, you can get like a $4.99 tuner app.
There are free ones.
So there are some free ones. I had this one called TE Tuner.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you can either tune it chromatically, play the note, and it recognizes where you're at, or you could do like he says. How do I do this?
Just generate a note?
Yes, sound, saw wave. Oh, it's called TE Tuner, and it smiles when you're in tune, and it's a really cool thing. But it's not playing right now. Insert beeping sound.
Malfunctioning technology.
And yeah, you can actually use that as a point of reference.
Yeah, and yeah, this is great ear training. It is fantastic ear training, just like he's saying. Try to sing up and down the major scale with that note as the root. Try to sing up and down the minor scale. Yeah. Try to sing the major arpeggio with that note as the root. Or with that.
Sing the major arpeggio and then sing the four arpeggio.
Yeah, the 5 arpeggio. Or sing the 1, the 3, and the 5, then sing the 4. Mm-hmm. This is great exercise. I would recommend walking down the street trying to do this kind of stuff. I used to work at a power plant, and the noise coming off those generators, and these generators are the size of buildings, right? There's 4 2-story. Jeez. And the sounds coming. The sound was so. We had to wear earplugs, safety regulation. And so, you would just be like, and I was a grunt. I was mopping the floor, in this giant factory floor. There's like 15 of us mopping. And I would just be hearing this fundamental note of the generators whirring in my brain. So to keep myself occupied, I would do exactly what he's saying. Just sing the note, then sing the fifth, then sing the minor third, and sing melodies, based on that, and just say going down there. It's invaluable. It's invaluable.
I kind of tend to, if I hear like someone's phone ring, I'll whistle it.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, like you're saying, like my stupid fridge in the next room that I have to turn off every time we do this.
Yeah.
Well, there's my B flat ish,
right?
60 cycles, right? But it's great to use your environment as a reference point.
Yeah, and this is the kind of stuff you should just be doing all the time. This is how music becomes not something you know intellectually, but something you kind of feel in your body, and know instinctively. It becomes more like the way you know how to speak your native language, and less like just a bunch of intellectual. Because like when they try to teach you a second language, right? They try to fill your head with vocabulary and sentence structure and stuff like that. But then when you go to a place where that language is spoken and you're having to interact, that's how you
submersion.
Yeah, right. This is a kind of musical submersion.
Smart, very smart, Tyler. Keep it up.
Good. Yeah, and all our listeners, we love tips.
Yeah,
we should do a tip thing where you send us in tips, and we'll
have a whole episode on listener tips.
Listener tips, yeah.
You guys can do the work for us. I love it. I'm writing that down.
Right, Jeremy is writing that down. That is a good idea. All right.
Genius. Okay. Now, the Patreon patrons are people who sign up on patreon.com/musicstudent101.
Right.
And they can donate $1 to $2 for just free entry and be able to see the videos and the extra episodes we do.
Yep.
$3 or more, you'll get a coffee mug, 18-ounce Music
Really
Student
nice
101.
one. Actually.
Yeah. Very nice. Black, 18 ounces.
Yep.
And then for $5 or more, you can ask us any question, and we'll try and do like a mini episode.
Yeah, we do a little 15-ish minute episode on your question.
So we say it often turns out to be a bit longer, but that's just us.
I think our average is like 28 at this.
Yeah.
Because we digress. Has anyone noticed?
I think some people have.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
Most of them like it. Now.
Well, speaking of which,
let's move on to our listener mail, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We have Alex Kalisko.
Nice.
From St. Paul, Minnesota.
Oh, nice.
Alex found us on Spotify.
Okay.
And he just started a job which, though important, is simple enough to allow him to listen to podcasts and music while he works.
Very good.
So he's really been able to check us out. Here's what he says. Here's what Alex says. Hello, Matthew and Jeremy. Today, officially, I caught up to your most recent episode on distant key modulation.
Yay!
I was extremely sad when I realized that that was it.
Oh, but it's not.
Oh, and actually, since he's written this, we've actually re-released the part 2 of that episode.
Nice.
He knows about that. So, but sometimes we're a little backlogged on this, so
yeah,
time can be a little wiggly with Music Student 101.
Yeah.
Okay. He says, I will be re-listening to episodes most definitely, but I also wanted to ask, what was the other podcast that you both approve of and were featured on as well? Real quick, he was referring to Musicality podcast.
Yeah, right.
From our good friends at Musical U.
Mm-hmm, yes.
And then he was talking about the Song Appeal podcast.
Which we were also on.
Yes, with our good friend Hunter Ferris, the very good show host, man. Very energetic, very passionate, who was kind enough to call us up and give us a nice little interview and use some of our quotes in his.
Yeah.
He takes pop songs and analyzes them.
And sort of analyzes them in a theory way. I remember that.
Yeah, explains in music theory terms why they appeal to us as they do. So it's really
great podcast, yeah.
So check that out. Moving on. He says, Alex goes on, last year I finished my bachelor's at Hamline U in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Very nice.
Congrats. And I added a music major halfway through my junior year.
Congrats.
I took a 2-year break from my undergrad, and music drove me to come back. Very nice, very nice. I started to learn theory, took Theory 2 and 3, and then TA'd for a Theory 2 my last semester.
Oh, wow. Nice job, man.
TA, huh?
Yeah.
Teacher's assistant, right?
Yeah, we can we'll swap war stories.
Oh, boy. Y'all been in the trenches. I'm trying to do the opera thing, and I was accepted into Roosevelt University CCPA program.
Congratulations.
For classics, performance, and voice. I'm so freaking excited to dedicate my educational future in music. Your podcast has been such a fabulous review. I listened to the augmented 6-chord episode first. Oh, man. I'm glad you had
Well, he had some some previous
previous knowledge. Yeah, he said and then the entire series in order afterwards. By the time I got back to that episode, everything made even more sense, he says. Through my vocal coaches, I am trying to learn the David Jones School of Voice. Ever heard of that, Matt?
I have not. This is why I love talking to musical people. I learn as much as you guys do sometimes. So.
Absolutely. Well, it turns out the David Jones School of Voice, David Jones has mastered the study of the Italian and Italian-Swedish schools of voice.
Okay.
Italian-Swedish.
Yeah. Well, the Italian School of Voice, I have a vague notion of what that is. the Italian Swedish. Wow. Yeah, this is a vocal person specialization kind of situation here. So.
Yeah. Which we are not vocal specialists, so it's cool to learn.
Obviously. Go listen to that Solfege episode. We are not vocal specialists.
No. So he says David Jones speaks of music and music knowledge as water droplets, falling slowly over time but sinking in. Y'all are great examples of musical knowledge and training. Thank you, says Alex.
Thank you, Alex. Those are very kind words, and thank you for giving me avenues to explore. I really appreciate that. I do like that metaphor, water droplets.
Yeah, falling slowly over time.
Sink in. Well, yeah, because you can't learn this quickly.
Yeah.
And you can't. If you try to drink from the fire hose, it's going to be really, really challenging. Yeah.
UHF flashback. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I do like that metaphor. I like it's a little bit here, a little bit there, right?
I told him for me it was more like a dense fog, very slowly, settling. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, man.
Good stuff. Yeah, the art of music education, and it certainly inspires me. It sounds like it inspires Alex too. The idea of how do you teach music?
Yeah,
obviously something that's near and dear to my heart. And I've seen and probably been guilty of going, this, spend an hour class time, just a torrent of information.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not a good way to learn.
No. The fire hose.
Not if, I like the water droplet sinking in.
Mm-hmm.
Learn, be familiar with what you know, and then move to the next droplet. And it can be painstaking. It can be laborious. It can take your whole life. Come commiserate with us.
Well, Alex sounds like he's on a pretty good path here.
Sounds like he's doing great. Yeah, so, we're really proud of him.
Yeah, thank you, Alex, and keep it up. Keep up the great work and the great metaphors. Keep them coming.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, dig this. In another email later on, Alex actually said this. I quote him. Dr. Phillips, thank you for being a part of the podcast. Your theory piano playing is fabulous. I want to get my fingers moving like yours do when thinking about theory concepts. For me, it's definitely a work in progress. Now, Matt, does that cancel out that review that you had?
No, because I still, I have what I have now is a very balanced sense of where I am. If I play chords while I'm talking about theory, I'm okay. Actually trying to play the piano, no one wants to be subjected to that. So I've got a real good balance now. But thank you, Alex. I appreciate it. You're TAing, you'll learn.
Yeah. Totally.
That is, what mediocre piano skills I have came very much from, I'm talking about what a German augmented sixth chord is, and I've got to figure out how to play one in class.
That's completely different set of skills than reading some notation off the page.
100% different.
And you're sitting there, and your mind is piecing together all this stuff.
Yeah.
Real fast, and you're having to kind of make it sound.
Yeah. Not as fast as I would like.
Yeah, well.
When I was a TA, Alex, here's a war story. For my the dean of the department, we had our little TA orientation, and, we're all teaching theory classes. There's a piano in every classroom. We're all expected to play some amount of stuff, right? Matter of fact, I was teaching an ear training class, too, so I was going to have to play examples and for them to dictate and stuff. So he said, now some of you are piano players, some of you are not.
Mm-hmm.
When you're teaching one of my classes, I don't want to know the difference.
Oh.
So that was the bar was set for me, and I would practice 3 hours a morning, my piano, for the day, not like just randomly practice what I feel like. The stuff for the day, I would spend 3 hours practicing and getting it under my fingers, so that he would not know the difference. And had he ever walked in, he would have totally known the difference. But
I would say by then you're a damn piano player. I don't know, man. But anyway,
yeah. So anyway, that's where all of that comes from, and And thank you, Alex, and thank you both for constructive feedback, positive and negative.
Yes.
I like all of it.
Absolutely. Be real. We'll be real with you if you'll be real with us.
Yeah.
For better or for worse.
Right.
Okay, man. So let's go ahead and move on to this episode.
Okay.
My goal is to make the content part at least as long as what we just did.
Okay. All right.
So get your digression hats on.
All right. Okay.
And we're gonna this is gonna be a 2-part episode at the least.
Okay.
At least.
Okay.
So we don't have to cover too much today. We're gonna talk about part 1, the Middle Ages music part 1.
Right, which is the early Middle Ages, I would imagine.
Which will be focusing on monophony.
Right.
Up until the point of polyphony.
Right.
What is monophony,
Okay.
Matt?
So, yeah, well.
Or should we just get into
Let's just get into it, because we'll cover. Well, no, we can start from there.
We'll distinguish the two.
I can riff for a minute. So, monophony, in the simplest terms, is a single melody.
Uh-huh.
The 3 big musical textures that you will learn about if you take music appreciation or something are monophony.
Uh-huh.
Music that is a single melody. Now, it can be a single melody sung by many people.
Uh-huh.
It can be a single melody sung in many different octaves at the same time in unison. But there is only one melody there, and that is the musical material. That is monophony.
Mono means one line of music. So far, so good.
Then there is polyphony, which is multiple melodies that happen simultaneously.
Uh-huh.
So the alto singer has a melody, and the tenor singer has a melody, and the bass singer has a melody, and
harmony is implied.
Harmony is implied, yeah. And these melodies fit together by way of some very strict and specific rules that we call the rules of counterpoint, and we did a whole 3-part episode on that, if you recall.
Yes, we did.
So that's polyphony. And then homophony, a melody supported by chords, a melody supported by harmony.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, there's gray area between these, always.
Uh-huh.
And I'm starting to realize the older I get that polyphony and homophony are not 2 different things, really.
I was wondering about that.
The chords come from counterpoint. The same way polyphony comes from counterpoint. You're just, if you're playing chords, you're just having simple melodies that are moving at the same time, right?
Right. So maybe homophony can be more compared to someone just playing acoustic guitar and singing a melody.
That's a classic example.
There's chords going on, and because he's playing a guitar, the chord shapes on guitar are kind of designed to make smooth transitions from
Absolutely, yeah. You're doing more polyphony than you realize. But yeah, somebody singing and playing acoustic guitar is a classic example of homophony, right? But in the Middle Ages, we're dealing primarily with monophony, especially in the beginning, right? So when was the beginning? We use the term Middle Ages, and we used to call them Dark Ages.
The Dark Ages.
And it kind of is not, what's the word? Intellectually PC or something to consider them Dark Ages anymore. They're called the Dark Ages because nobody knew anything.
But they knew more than the age before that, which was like the Bronze. I mean, there was gold in it.
Yeah, they knew more than they did in the Bronze Age.
Yeah.
But the most recent era, the classical era of the Roman Empire, so the Roman Empire, we're talking about 500 AD, 600, that falls to pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And when the Roman Empire falls to pieces, all the learning and knowledge and technological advancement, which was significant, of the Roman Empire era, is kind of lost. And they are not as technically advanced.
Like diffused?
Or just lost.
Yeah.
People died without, and it was just gone.
Wow.
Yeah, people did not, it was not as technical, it was not as advanced technologically. Fewer people knew less things, right? And so, this is why we kind of called it the Dark Ages. That is not to say there was not knowledge, because there was. That is not to say there was not a level of technology, because there was. And that is why we now consider it the Middle Ages. Basically the time from the fall of the Roman Empire up to the Renaissance, which is 1300-ish.
So 500 or 600 to about 1300 CE.
CE. Common Era.
Common Era.
Which maps AD exactly. They just took the religious connotation out of it rather than calling it Annum Deus, Year of Our Lord.
Oh, okay.
They just said Common Era. So
very cool. Very cool.
Make of that what you will. But yeah, so it was a very long time, and like a lot happened, even though a lot didn't happen. It's thought of as not a time of very fast social advancement, at least not in Europe. Now, this is the time when, like, the Middle Eastern societies are inventing algebra and calculus and doing all kinds of great stuff like that. But in terms of Europe, it's considered a time when not a lot is advancing very fast, and most people don't have very much education. The people that did have education were people involved in the church.
Right.
Your monks, your priests, your nuns, those people.
Okay.
Yeah. So in the Middle Ages, the Christian church supported and defined music. And it did that with a lot of things. The center of life in Middle Ages was really centered around the church. This is a time in which the duke or count or whatever, who was the noble in charge of your land, was some far-off guy in a castle somewhere who didn't really care about you or your problems.
Right.
So, it was the church where you got married, and the church where you had funerals. It was the church that was the social center. It was the church that handled disputes.
That was your community.
Yeah, that was your community.
That was when you got a chance to get together and see the people and for a common cause, which is to worship.
Right, yeah. So musicians of this time are religious people. There was secular music. We know this.
We do.
Played by minstrels. But these people did not write anything down, so we don't know very much about it. We're back into the realm of where we're just kind of having to speculate now.
Yeah.
Based on what people write about this music.
Back then, was secular music considered, because it was not of the church, was it considered of the devil, or was it accepted, or was it just
I don't know. It's not hard. It's not easy to make a blanket statement, I don't think.
Right, of the devil.
It was definitely considered not of the church.
Yeah, okay. Well,
and you were definitely not going to hear it in church.
Well, they also touched on some themes that might have been considered a little blue.
Yeah, possibly. We just don't really know that much about it.
Yeah.
We just don't know that much about it. We figure it was we figure it was probably dealing with like romance and love and things like that, because later in the Middle Ages, when we do start to know things about it, the songs of the jongleurs and the troubadours and the trouvères and things like that, these are just songs that are not of a religious nature. They're love songs, and the idea of I am in love with this woman, but she is noble born, and I'm a lonely peasant, so I can never have her. So I'm just going to go die. Yeah. So but that's later Middle Ages. There's no telling how long that went on, but early Middle Ages, we know there was secular music. We just don't know much about it.
Okay.
Yeah. These church services, they could be held in grand cathedrals or small parishes. The ones that had the most music were usually the bigger cathedrals. Think Notre Dame, for example, which is a Middle Ages church. Yeah, such a loss, right?
I know, that was a terrible shame.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's still there. They're rebuilding.
Yeah,
well. There could be as many as 8 services a day.
8 services a day.
Yeah, I mean, well, these were religious people. That's basically what they did, is they went to mass. And they were Roman Catholic people too.
Okay.
That was the only denomination at the time.
Okay. Yeah.
So each of these services could have its own format, could have its own music, but they got this music from the divine office. So the church sort of had a calendar of what music would be sung on what day, And, there was little variations from church to church, but there was a lot that was just sort of pre-planned for them.
Yeah.
And every church was doing the same thing and working off the same model.
So were they trying to network and try and standardize some of these things, or did every church have their own set of 8 different melodies per day?
Some things were extremely standardized, and some things were kind of up to interpretation.
Okay.
Right.
Because you think, just when you think you wrote yourself an original melody.
Oh yeah, no, that didn't happen. No, there were pre-approved religious music that you could choose from.
Yeah.
The Mass typically had a Kyrie in it, right? Kyrie eleison, Christe eleison, Kyrie. This was part of the proper Mass, right? And so this would happen at every Mass. Now, which Kyrie you decided to sing, maybe that's kind of up to you a little bit.
I see.
But you were going to sing a Kyrie, and at that particular point in the service, in its appropriate point, and some the big important days, Christmas, Easter, all of this was already planned. There was even less variation in those.
Right.
So that's kind of what we're dealing with. We're dealing with religious music, entirely sung, entirely vocal. Instruments had not really come into their fore. The instruments that there were not very dependable in terms of tuning and maintenance. Keeping lasting a very long time, and so they just really weren't part of church music and didn't get a lot of attention from the church.
Which is kind of a bummer, because to put us in the mood today, I have armed you with an organ, Matt.
I am armed with an organ.
But that might have actually been a hurdy-gurdy back then.
And it wouldn't have been in the church.
It wouldn't have been in the church.
But
just to put us in the mood.
It still sounds good.
It still sounds good.
Yeah.
Hey, question for you, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Why was it mainly the church? I mean, I guess there's the communal aspect like you're talking about. Mm-hmm. But why was it that music started off in the church?
Well...
Or why were they the ones with access?
Because it was the church that had the knowledge. It was the church that had a firm grip on any kind of education.
Mm-hmm.
These priests and monks and nuns and all were also the people who had learning. There were not colleges and universities that peasants could go to. If you were a scholarly minded person, then you should go be a monk or a priest or something. So they were the ones who created the earliest systems of notation for writing down music. They were the ones who were literate. They're the ones who could read. So not only could they read music, but they could read words and take classes on music. Although they weren't classes, so this is where the knowledge was contained and preserved.
Okay.
So this is where you had the people who knew how to write about music. Now, that for all we know, there's all this music going on outside of the church that just doesn't. But because these people didn't know how to write music down, it's just gone, right? I mean, there's no CDs.
Could have been some of the most glorious music ever known to man, but we'll
never know.
We'll never know.
We'll never know. And that was sort of the societal makeup of the Middle Ages.
Okay.
It's kind of the church is more powerful than kings in some instances.
Right.
In the center of the community, and this music is being done in these giant cathedrals. And if you can just imagine, most people probably didn't hear music every day in their life the way we do. Most people, quite frankly, didn't see a building that nice except when they went to the cathedral. And most people certainly didn't hear music like that. So you imagine walking in to like one of the only stone buildings you've ever seen in your life, right? And it's this huge cathedral, right, with the light coming in, the stained glass windows, and the music, the chanting of the monks, at the center. This was a powerful experience for these people.
Yeah. I think in a past conversation we were talking about this, and you likened it to like traveling really far to see a rock show or something, like a festival or something.
Oh yeah, people would come from miles around.
Yeah,
And, not every town had a cathedral, obviously. Some people had to make do with what they could build on their own. But the biggest cathedrals, which would take generations to complete, the people who started building them were dead by the time they somebody else finished it. These were big deals.
Hey, you were saying how it took generations to build some of these cathedrals. Check this out, man. One year I was working at the barber track. We had this racetrack out here called the barber track.
Yeah.
And it was a Sunday, and they had a blow-up church, man. They had an inflatable, a big giant blow-up church, and that people could actually still be at the race and go and have their church.
That's funny.
Anyway.
That's funny.
Moving on.
Yeah. So what is this music like? Well, like I said, it's monophonic.
Monophonic.
Sung entirely by men.
One line of music sung entirely?
Sung entirely by men.
Monophonic.
So, monophonic. Basses and tenors.
My dad jokes are getting weird. They're getting worse and worse as I get older. If only Chloe was there for that one.
So anyway, we consider a lot of this early music to be plain chant.
Mm-hmm.
And we call it plain chant just because it is, like we said, just men singing a single chant, so a single melody. Yeah. Or, let's play something a little happier. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that is plain chant. Monophonic, unaccompanied, 4 voices. You'll also hear it...
4 voices, not the number 4, right?
Yeah, music for voices. It's vocal music, yeah.
Just to specify.
I mean, it could be just 4 people singing. But yeah, we don't have the division. It's a good point. Bass, tenor, alto, soprano. We don't have that division yet. Everybody's just singing the same melody in the octave that feels most comfortable to them, really.
Yes, if there are 4 voices, 4 people singing, they're all singing unison or octave or...
Right, yeah. So right, kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
You'll often hear this referred to as Gregorian chant.
Oh, okay.
And,
that I have heard of.
Yeah. Some scholars kind of get prickly at this because plain chant and Gregorian chant aren't the same thing. Gregorian chant is a specific set of chants.
Okay.
A specific catalog of plain chant. And it was collected and cataloged by Pope Gregory I,
Aha.
who declared that this is what we would use in the church, right? There's this myth that he... there's this myth that he went and sat in his room behind a little divider or something, and a bird flew in and landed on his window and sang all of them into his ear.
Nah, man.
And then it was, the bird was God, right, singing the Gregorian chants into his ear, and so he writes them all down and, makes them into the divine office.
I'd love to think that's how that all went down.
Yeah, that's a great story. I mean, the reality is probably just he composed / collected, / organized,
Mm-hmm.
But there you have it.
Pope Gregory.
There is no definite rhythm. The lengths of notes change with each singing. The notes are notated down. What we have is they're called neumes, right?
Yeah.
Which we alluded to earlier. So there's a little dash that's a long note, right? And then a little diamond-shaped dot this just a short note. And so you'll see, like a whole little spread of dot notes and then a longer one. So hold the long note, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then little symbols to go, oh, and things like that. Yeah.
So it's kind of that whole da 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 da.
Yeah.
Da 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 da.
Yeah.
Heard
that kind
plenty
of
of that, man.
Yeah, and they would tell you what mode you're in. And the most popular modes are probably Dorian and Mixolydian.
Oh yeah, I think we decided that it was Dorian, Mixolydian,
Yep.
a little bit of Lydian.
A little bit of Lydian, yeah.
And Aeolian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe a little Phrygian, which is like minor with a flatted 2, flatted scale degree 2. And I guess Dorian or Mixolydian would have been the more major-y.
Yeah, it would have been the more major, happier, triumphant-y kind of stuff that you'll hear at Christmas.
Oh, and just to review real quick, Mixolydian is major scale with
a lowered 7.
Yeah, and then Dorian
is the minor scale with a raised 6 with a.
Yep, and then Lydian
is the major scale. Oh crap! Good with a lowered 5th.
Sharp 4, I call it,
or a sharp 4th. Yeah.
But yeah, and then what else? Dorian, Mixolydian, Lydian. Aeolian's just minor.
Aeolian's just minor. And Ionian's just major, and those two actually didn't show up as much.
Right, because I guess Dorian won over Aeolian at the time, and then Mixolydian won over major at the time.
Yeah. And there are tuning reasons for this. We're doing Pythagorean tuning, which is adhering more strictly to the frequency ratios that come from dividing a string first in half, then into quarters, and then to eighths and things like that to create all of our notes eventually.
Check out the Overtone series episode.
Yes, we talked about it. Talked about it. So it is non-metrical. The lengths of the notes can change depending on who's doing the singing.
So I guess from reading the neumes, they were able to determine. I'm still a little confused as to how they were able to keep everything in sync, because I assume this is before the concept of a director.
Yeah, it is.
Doing signs or whatever.
Yeah, it is.
Conducting.
There had to be a consensus, right? I mean, there had to be this note is about this long. You can't see a longer neume and just hold it forever just because you feel like it, right? There was there had to be the sort of general consensus going on.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't perfectly in sync.
Probably not.
When people start singing together, oftentimes just something kind of takes over.
Yeah.
Like a collective rhythm kind of takes over.
Yeah, like a collective rhythm, yeah. And, the really good monks were probably more in sync. The really good ones were probably more in sync than the really bad ones.
Right.
I mean, if you want to hear the real good stuff, go to Paris and listen to them. Not the local hokey monks at your. I don't know.
Yeah.
There you go.
Very cool, man.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what about this recitation?
So
situation?
A recitation is a type of plain chant, and there are many Gregorian chants that are recitations. Usually used for any text where you wanted to have to get out a whole lot of words. Melody was used on more significant occasions, but a recitation was if you were saying a particular prayer or something that was kind of wordy.
Recite.
Yeah, and then you kind of dignum domini essate patro. Yeah,
nice.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
That is a Gregorian recitation.
Okay.
A little less melodic, and a little more reciting.
So compared to plain chant, they'll probably
Well, it's a type of plain chant.
Okay, so maybe it's a type of plain chant where they spend less time moving around and more time focusing on the words.
Absolutely.
So they're sticking around on one melody to get all those words out.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. More significant, like I said, more significant things. If you were ever, I don't know, let's just say, you were singing something that had words spoken by Jesus. Well, that's going to be more melodic. For the reason that these words are significant, right? Kind of like how you can buy Bibles where the words of Jesus are in red.
So the words of Jesus are in red, but we did on the Patreon site, we did an episode on the vocal death growl.
Yeah.
It was Hildegard of Bingen who actually had a piece of music that involved the devil.
Yeah.
And that might have been one of the first incidences of the death growl.
The death growl,
whoever was speaking the devil's voice actually had to do it in a growly kind of tone.
Centuries-old tradition.
Mm-hmm.
People just don't know.
The vocal death growl.
Yeah, people just don't know. So there you go.
Okay, so that was the Gregorian recitation.
Yes.
What's now we have the Gregorian melody.
Gregorian melody. So other occasions, required other genres of plain chant, like the antiphon, for example, is more melodic in recitation. It has more actual singing. Antiphons were sung at things like sort of special events.
Ah.
Funerals, for example. In Paradisum is a famous one. It was sung, as the body is being taken down and it's talking about, in paradise we will eventually come to rest. And those things were not, those things that were meant to be special occasions like that are typically not recited as much. They are typically sung.
Right?
Okay. And the 5 parts of the Mass that don't change from day to day to day, those parts of the Mass are generally sung, generally not recited. So the Kyrie, the Credo, the Gloria, the Sanctus, the Agnus Dei.
Okay. It's all coming back to me because when I would go to Catholic church, there was a few times where there's a cathedral here in Birmingham called St. Paul's Cathedral.
Yes.
And sometimes they do a legit, straight up, old school Latin Mass.
Every Sunday. They do legit proper Mass.
But not in Latin, right? I mean...
Well, that part's in Latin.
Yeah, okay, so when he's actually doing the recitation, like when he holds up the communion...
That part's in English.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. The recitation he'll do in English. But like when you sing the Kyrie, that's Latin, right? When you sing the Credo, that's Latin. The sung parts, a lot of it's still in Latin. Those 5 parts still sung in Latin.
It's a pretty cool thing to see.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the cathedral, it's cool to hear.
Yeah, it's amazing. You can go see this stuff done today. Catholic churches all over the world still do this stuff. It hasn't been lost. You can still go see it and hear it. A lot has changed. There's a lot more in the native language of the church now. Mm-hmm. Than here in the United States, that's going to be English.
Yep.
Than there would have been back in the day. But then a lot of the stuff hasn't changed. The Catholic calendar still hasn't changed. So there's the 5 parts of the Mass, and then you'll also sing other stuff, which can be in English or not. That's part of the common Mass, the kind of thing that would change depending on the day. Mm-hmm. But it's all kind of planned out still. Yeah. The particular reading of the Bible. There's a part where they read a section of the Bible.
Yeah.
And that's laid out every single day. So if you go to church every day, you'll eventually have the whole Bible read to you.
Yeah.
So a lot of that's still around, and you can still go see it today. I recommend it just for the musicological value itself. By itself.
It's a thing to behold for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on.
Yeah. So this is what music kind of is. It is very religious. It is very it is very vocal. There are almost no actual instruments. There are no instruments in the church. The church actually thinks of instruments as bad.
Right.
They do kind of associate them, not always with the devil necessarily, but with the lowly realm of man kind of stuff. Right. Mm-hmm. They don't like instruments.
Right.
This has been a constant back and forth through the centuries of European and now Euro-American society. What instruments should be in the church, should not be in the church. Huh. Should there be no instruments in the church, or is an organ okay, or is it okay to play guitar in the church? And
God, even as recently as W.C. Handy, the father of the blues, his father said he could not play.
You can't play that in church.
He had to sneak out. No, he couldn't play instruments at all. He had to sneak out because he was very religious and said that instruments were of the devil. And in the grand scheme, this really wasn't too long ago.
Yeah, you can still find this argument today. Yeah. I still hear people say, they brought a guitar into church, like, the church is the appropriate place to sit and play guitar, and we've just lost the sense of what church is supposed to be. And it's been, I always laugh whenever anybody says that, because I think you have been losing this battle for all of Western history. Uh-huh. So, and you continue to lose this battle, so you might as well just give it up.
Hang it up, buddy.
Anyway, so that's where we are, and we have in the Middle Ages, not counting Pope Gregory, our first actual composer of music, the first person whose name is slapped to an actual piece of music that they wrote, is a woman.
How about that?
How about that?
Yeah.
It's important to observe this because in music history, we definitely go through this time where it's just a bunch of old, dead, white guys.
Yeah.
Right? So the first one we ever had was a woman. Her name was Hildegard of Bingen.
Yeah.
And she was the abbess in a small convent in what is now Germany. She was a fascinating person.
Yeah.
Just a fascinating person. She was a prophet on top of being a composer of music.
Do tell.
She was called the Sibyl of the Rhine. Sibyl being the Greek goddess who spoke through the stone and would give prophecies and things. So she was considered, and the Rhine being the river in Germany.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
she's considered the Sibyl of the Rhine.
Okay. Wow.
She makes these prophecies, and many people believe that her prophecies are coming true. And so the well-to-dos of the Middle Ages, counts and dukes and princes and kings are coming to seek her counsel. She writes books. She writes books that are sort of fiction books, or what we might think of as fiction books. And then she writes books of political commentary. She writes books of history. She records a lot of history.
Very nice.
And things. She's very outspoken. She sort of rules this abbess with an iron fist, and you're like, people won't tell her what to do. It's like, I vaguely remember some story of an archbishop coming and saying, you shouldn't let the girls do this or that, and Hildegard being just, you're leaving tomorrow. I don't care what you, so and on top of all this, she's composing plain chant melodies. Now we can't call these Gregorian chant, right? Because this is not the chants of Pope Gregory that he compiled. This is her stuff.
Okay.
She's composing this, and setting to it poems that she wrote. She gets the lyrics from the poetry that she wrote.
Okay.
Right, and setting it to this chant. The piece that was our intro music.
Yeah.
Is a piece of Gregorian chant composed by Hildegard of Bingen.
Huh.
And this is a type of what's called a sequence. So it is a sequence is much more elaborate than an antiphon. There's a tune, and then it's sung again with a little bit of variation, and then another tune sung again with a little bit of variation, and then another tune sung again with a little bit of variation.
Okay.
Right? And in Columbia Exposit, originally, the tune would be sung by a solo singer, and then the second time it would be sung by the choir.
Okay.
Still monophonic, still in octaves in unison, whatever. But sung by that. Same thing for so on and so forth.
It's becoming that more communal call and response.
Right. Yeah. Didn't know we had call and response in European history, did you? But yeah, call and response is universal. Everybody figures that out.
So cool. She kind of the first call and response.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what she's known for.
The first composer of European history, too.
Almost like the first songwriter, because it sounds like she's writing her own poems.
Absolutely.
Whereas Pope Gregory was quoting, Bible quotations, right? Or Latin Mass, or
he was gathering stuff from a lot of sources, all of them religious.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, Bible verses, Psalm verses, things like that. I would actually like to know more about, sort of, it's not all straight from the Bible, but
I'd like to know more about why it's just this one woman in all the Middle Ages up until, Aretha Franklin. Before women started to become, I know it was probably a few. Well,
there was a few along the way.
Some of the mother of the blues, which was Ma Rainey, and then Bessie Smith. But yeah. What happened in between that period?
You have to give due to Elizabeth Claude de la Guerre eventually, and Clara Schumann. Yeah. There's a few, probably not enough, but the first one was a woman, so there's something.
That's interesting, huh?
Yeah. So, and we talk about this as moving very slowly, right? So if the Middle Ages start 600 or so, it's not till the 11th century or so. Yeah. That we get held, a long time.
400 years or so.
Yeah. As things go on, though, there are some things that are changing gradually, but changing. one of the things that's changing is the nobility, the kings and barons and dukes and margraves and et cetera, et cetera. They gradually begin to compete with the church for power.
Huh. Yeah.
And knowledge.
Right.
And they come to sort of assume leadership in musical matters more. The church is still the most powerful institution in Europe, but they are starting to sort of have more interest and have more knowledge. A lot of them, and this was totally like a noble thing to do. You can tell these guys didn't have to actually work for a living but they decided they decided they would do things like become trouvères.
Okay.
And this is where we get our sort of our modern idea maybe of a singing minstrel, kind of. They were poet composers. They would write poetry. They would set it to music. They would have been educated by the church because they were noble.
Yes.
And they would go out and sing court songs. And this is the age of chivalry, of knights and squires and King Arthur and all of this stuff. These songs would be secular, not religious. Love songs, most of them.
Yes.
I'm so much in love and I can't have you that it'll just kill me. Not being able to express my love to you is just literally going to kill me. I'm dying. I'm dying of this. These songs are they're about chivalry. They're about love. They're about laments for dead loves or dead poets. There are songs about romantic encounters. Some of them are kind of sad and serious. Some of them are kind of like, I hid in the bushes and watched you bathe, nice and creepy like that.
Creepsters were always around.
Yeah. And as we get into the late Middle Ages, we start talking about that a lot. We start talking about the trouvères, as they were known in the north of France, or the troubadours, as they were known in the south of France. Or the Minnesängers, as they were known in Germany. 3 different names for the same thing. These nobles kind of going around singing, and we sort of think of them as being accompanied by some kind of instrument, and they're probably just playing the same melody on the instrument that they're singing.
Yeah.
Most of the time. Or like just doing a pedal tone or something.
Rich kid, their parents buys them a Martin, so they're going to go off to all the parties and play.
Absolutely. Like I said, you can tell these guys didn't have to work for a living, right? These were noble. These were the people that had all the money, right? And they didn't have anything to do with their lives really, and so they
Well, this kind of harkens back to the whole church thing. Like the church being the first people to actually have music, access to music. A lot of that had to do with the money for resources. I know. If the church is anything like it was today, it was probably still a very wealthy entity.
Extraordinarily wealthy.
Due to tithing and all those wonderful things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so they could actually afford the feather pen and the inkwell and the paper.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And it was the churches the knowledge that the church had collected is what survived the fall of the Roman Empire. So they were the ones that knew stuff.
Yeah. Keepers of the knowledge.
Yeah. Jealously guarded it in many cases.
Any notable troubadours?
Bernard de Ventadoren comes up a lot. He was French. He was a troubadour. He came to work in England in Henry II's wife, Eleanor of Aquitaine. He was sort of her court composer, entertained her guests while they were at court. And things like that. These songs were very, they were strophic.
Strophic,
which is same music over and over again with different words, right?
Aha.
So we still have this. We still have music like this.
Most of it, right? In pop music. So the verse is strophic because it's always going to be usually the same melody.
Yeah. And then sort of take your. If you're thinking verse, chorus, standard pop song, take the choruses out. Verse, 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 verse.
Okay.
Different words, same music.
Got it.
Yeah.
So, not long ago, we had an episode on forms and analysis.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to apply a form to strophic, that would just be A.
Would be A prime, A double prime, A triple prime.
Okay, all A.
Which is why we just call it strophic.
Okay.
And leave it at that.
Easy enough.
Yeah. So so there's room for interpretation in these, right? A lot of people think that this music is in fact a lot less refined than the way you hear it on recordings today. And you can definitely get recordings today, where it's got the soft reverb and the sort of the gentle voices and things. There are scholars who will tell you that it was a lot harsher,
Yeah.
and it was a lot less in tune.
You won't. So we're talking about how music probably sounded back then.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Speculative, but based on common sense.
Yeah. So, there is still room for speculation.
Mm-hmm.
But that room for speculation is, at this age, a certain amount of certainty. We have the books that Hildegard, the books of her music that she wrote herself. We have those.
Okay.
The pages are made of an animal skin, and worms like to eat them.
So
they would get bookworms.
No.
Right, digging through the yeah.
Oh, well, I'm just learning all kinds of great things today.
Yeah, and there's little holes drilled in the pages because the worms got in them and started eating them.
Man.
Yeah. Hence the term bookworm. And
what are some other things we can speculate on? We already mentioned how in the Middle Ages, or at least as we know at the first part of the Middle Ages, music was likely unaccompanied, all vocal, all monophonic, all one line, unison melody.
Yep.
But we still wonder if there were instruments being played, probably not in the church.
Almost certainly not in the church.
Okay, certainly not in the church. Secularly, we're thinking maybe there were some
primitive instruments. Yeah.
The hurdy-gurdy.
The hurdy-gurdy.
The lute.
Yeah, the sackbut.
The what?
The sackbut.
The sackbut.
The sackbut.
What on earth could this be?
It's kind of bassoon-like. It was like a wind instrument.
Huh. All right.
And the hurdy-gurdy, it had those strings, right? And it had that felt that was on a wheel.
Yeah, it's kind of like
with a crank.
Yeah, it's like a crank violin.
Yeah, so you turn the crank and the felt goes over the strings and starts them to vibrate and sound.
Yeah.
So
it's a cool thing to see.
Yeah, it's fun.
Have we covered just about everything up until our good friend Polyphony rears its beautiful head?
Not up until Polyphony, but we've covered the first half of the Middle Ages. Hit the highlights anyway. Now, of course, people get degrees in Middle Ages music. You could cover this to the depth that you want to.
Sure.
And I would recommend, actually, that if any of this stuff interests you at all, there are some great recordings of Middle Ages music out there. I mean, search YouTube for Gregorian chant, and you're going to come up with a whole lot of really good stuff. But the Tallis scholars are some people that I would maybe do some research on, get some of their music. They specialize in what we call early music.
Okay.
Music of the Middle Ages and Renaissance. Anonymous 4.
Uh-huh.
Also very good.
Huh.
There's a CD I have of a quote-unquote band called Chant. And I say quote-unquote band because what they are a collection of monks from the Cathedral of Santo Domingo de something or other. And they just brought in some recording texts and recorded themselves singing this music, which goes back to that they sing in their church every day.
That they just passed down orally.
Yeah, it was a huge hit in the 90s. In the 1990s, it was like people got into this. This album was big.
Well, I remember Enigma came out with that thing.
And yeah. So that's chant inspired.
It's like chant meets hip hop groove.
Yeah, sad. Dis-moi. Yeah. I remember that. Whatever happened to Enigma?
Gosh,
they were French.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they sang in French. And
it was a big hit, though, and it actually sounded pretty cool back then.
Oh, yeah.
Still pretty cool.
Yeah, it was like the theme song to sex for like 4 years out of the 90s, right?
Like not healthy sex, like something.
I went to see an NC-17 movie, and these two people are doing it, and this is the background music to it because it's just sex music.
Yeah, it's like someone's cheating on somebody, or something bad or dark, or like a person of the cloth is being tempted, or something scandalous. It's not healthy. It's not good.
Yeah.
Healthy sex music.
It's not healthy sex music. Right? What would healthy sex music be?
It's definitely not with a wah pedal. It's definitely not that.
Definitely not that. No.
Barry White. Al Green.
Something like that.
Whatever your jam is. Yeah. That's about as first.
Or something like the theme song to The Princess Bride or something. It's like now it's love. Right?
Mark Knopfler.
Yeah.
That man is a great songwriter.
He is.
Great voice too, rich.
But anyway, yeah, so check out the Tyler Scholars. And they're really kind of more Renaissance, I think, but they do some Middle Ages stuff. Check out Chant.
Uh-huh.
Check out Anonymous 4. Is great stuff like this.
Hey, it's good that you're giving these recommendations because this has been one of the reasons we've held off on this episode for so long.
Copyright.
Right. It's copyright. And we initially recorded this episode a couple of years ago.
Yeah, with musical examples.
It was one of the first things we did, and we had these musical examples, and I did a little more research and started to find it.
Yeah, copyright's an issue because is the copyright the people who own the people who recorded? Yeah, the music is public domain.
Oh yeah, it's all well into public domain.
Yeah, but the people who recorded the actual sample. So unless you want to sing it yourself, which nobody wants to see us try that.
Ooh. Your Very Dignum wasn't that bad though.
Very Dignum.
Very Dignum, yeah. Wasn't that bad.
I appreciate it. That was complete Latin gibberish, obviously.
Well, thank God we have Sarah.
Yeah, thank God. We should try to get her to sing stuff more often.
I know. Let's do just a really quick recap, if we can, about Middle Ages music, and then we'll get on out of here.
Yeah, so the Middle Ages music, and I'm just going to try to do this recap just kind of off the top of my head here.
Go for it.
So it is monophonic, meaning there's a single melody sung by many people or one person or whatever. It is largely religious and almost entirely vocal. For much of the Middle Ages, what we are doing is going to church and hear somebody singing Gregorian chant, the chants of Pope Gregory, which become the foundation of all church music.
Which may or may not have been inspired by a bird flying.
By a bird coming in and singing it into his ear.
That is speculation.
That bird being God, and yeah. There are some notable visionaries like Hildegard of Bingen. Actually wrote her own music, wrote her own poetry to use as words, not just stuck on Gregorian chant.
Right.
Fascinating person in history. It's funny, Middle Ages, if you're a scholar of Middle Ages music, Hildegard is one kind of person to you. And if you're a scholar of Middle Ages politics, she's another. And if you're a scholar of Middle Ages history or Middle Ages theology,
She's all
you all talk about Hildegard in different ways.
She's all over the place, huh?
Yeah.
We also learned don't F with Hildegard.
Yeah. Well, she just ignores you and does what she wants. Yeah. Right. And then court music was largely music sung by these trouvères, and it was largely love songs that was about loving you so deeply I'm going to die and all of this kind of stuff. And this was what was going on in the courts of the noblemen, the kings and the princes. When they would hold court, they would hire these people to come in and sing for them. Not religious music.
Right. Yeah. So. Secular,
exactly.
Very cool. Well,
I hope that's helpful.
I hope so too. We had plenty to say on that, and it's a pretty interesting topic. Pretty fascinating.
It's kind of fun. Yeah, it's kind of fun stuff.
I like history when it's put to me in this fashion.
When it's just me running my mouth?
Yeah. The only thing missing is a pint.
Yeah, the kind of historian... I am not an historian. And because I'm not an historian, I don't really care about dates. And I don't really... I like having a feel of why the particular kind of music came out of a kind of a place.
Yeah, progression, the genesis.
Yeah.
The backstory.
The mood, the environment.
Yeah.
I think, history is not just a collection of dates.
Nah, it's a great story.
I mean, that's what you have to memorize when you're taking history classes. But
yeah. Well, I'm not sure when we'll get into part 2. It won't be immediately, but
we will definitely get into it.
When we do, it will be
and talk about the Notre Dame school.
Yeah, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and the organum.
So stay tuned for that, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Very soon. Not in 600 years.
It'll definitely be within the next 600 years.
Thank you for joining us on another history episode. We still have more to say about the Middle Ages, so keep listening. For questions or comments, contact us at info@musicstudent101.com.